Hello and welcome to MEE Live. I'm Matilda Mallinson. It's Tuesday, the 28th of July, 2026. Today, Israel's latest front, the West Bank. But first, the headlines. Oman has presented a proposal to Iran for joint management of the Strait of Hormuz with voluntary fees, Reuters reports. The proposal, which would ensure Tehran does not exercise sole control of the waterway, comes on the fourth consecutive day without direct hostilities between the US and Iran. US President Donald Trump announced good talks and the chance of a peace deal. In the same statement, he threatened returning to warfare. Iran, however, downplayed talks of negotiations. A foreign ministry spokesperson said mediators may convey messages, but there are no direct talks between the two sides. The US abruptly paused attacks on Saturday after targeting Iranian coastal areas in a nearly two-week escalation. In this period, US attacks killed 60 people and injured about 670 Iranians, according to local news agencies. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in Washington to meet with US President Donald Trump. The two are expected to discuss the war on Iran and efforts to expand the Abraham Accords, as well as a peace framework regarding Lebanon. The Israeli Prime Minister will be keen to dispel rumors of a cooling of relations as their interests in Iran diverge. 8 months into a war the two launched together. Israeli attacks and demolitions were reported by state media in southern Lebanon this morning. Firefighters in France and Spain are scrambling to contain some of Europe's largest wildfires before another spell of extreme heat that is expected to intensify the blazes. In Spain, the country's biggest recorded wildfire has scorched 50,000 hectares in the Avila region. In neighbouring France, a massive blaze near Bordeaux has forced the evacuation of 220,000 people. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said the fires were the most painful manifestation of a climate emergency and argued such disasters are no longer an exception, it is the rule. Meteorologists expect another heatwave to arrive from midweek, raising fears that the already desperate firefighting efforts will become even more difficult. Up next, the West Bank. The next words you hear come from a Palestinian mother in the West Bank village of Tel, the epicenter of escalating settler tensions and military crackdowns. She's been revoiced by my colleague at Middle East Eye to protect her identity.
The situation is one of continuous incursions throughout the day. They keep coming in and out. At night, however, the situation is different. There are military incursions, arrests, and raids on people's homes. On the first day, more than 55 people were arrested. They carried out field interrogations after taking over a house and turning it into an interrogation centre. I tell my 5-year-old son the truth. I tell him that the settlers came into the area and they might attack people. I do not want him to be disconnected from reality because he could find himself in the middle of such an event, and that would affect him even more psychologically. Even our children stay with us all the time, waiting because the army could enter at any moment. They no longer sleep in their own rooms. Instead, they sleep in the living room and we all stay awake together. Of course I am afraid. We remain constantly on edge. Our nights have turned into days.
On Friday morning, dozens of Israeli settlers, some armed, entered the village of Tel, southwest of Nablus. They were met with resistance, and by the time the shooting stopped, 4 Palestinians and 2 Israelis were dead. Escalation followed as the Israeli military announced extensive counterterrorism operations targeting Palestinian locals. They deployed 5 additional combat companies, raided a hospital, detained hundreds, and put dozens of communities under lockdown. Settlers have set homes alight and burned 2 mosques on one scorched wall, a single Hebrew word, revenge. But the escalation did not begin on July the 24th. It merely intensifies a steady transformation of the West Bank under Israel's most right-wing government in history, expanding settlements, state-backed settler violence, and whole communities pushed off generational land. Coming up, we'll speak to Israeli humanitarian turned politician in the upcoming election, Orly Noy. But first, here to bring us the latest from the ground is Palestinian human rights defender and head of the Stop the Wall campaign, Jamal Juma, along with Middle East Eye's Jerusalem bureau chief, Lubna Masarwa. Jamal, Lubna, welcome to MEE Live. Jamal, where are you joining us from? And just talk us through the situation for Palestinians living in the West Bank at this current moment in time.
Thank you very much for this very important report that you are doing. I'm joining you from Ramallah. Maybe the report that you were just showing on about Tel, this is exactly what's happening every day in most of the Palestinian area. And number talks. In the first 6 months of this year, 11,000 attacks, over 11,000 attacks by settlers and military on the Palestinian community. That's ranging of 2,000 attacks daily, monthly. So we can imagine, this is a war. This is a war on the Palestinian people. 24 Palestinians has been killed by settlers. Today we are not talking about isolated incident like that's happening in the West Bank. This is a very well organized militias that launching terror on the Palestinian villages everywhere. And there is a plan behind it. Who's behind the settlers? Behind the settlers is the government itself. The whole ministry with the budget that allocated for training, militarizing, and also equipping all the settlers with all what they need. And most of them are in the soldiers in the Israeli military. You need to see that when they call for attack on a village, you find that they are coming at a certain point, at a certain time from all the settlements around with thousands of numbers of settlers armed, backed up with the military soldiers in case of Palestinians retaliation. That's about the settlers' attacks. And you can imagine what comes with these attacks. You have been shown in the video, the burning the trees, the fields, the mosques, the schools, the houses, wherever they can reach. Mostly in the villages, even worse than that. There is a clear attempt to start ethnically cleanse the villages as well, displace them. And that's what's so clear for us from occupying houses at the edges of the villages. Many villages now, their settlers have been occupying houses guarded by the Israeli military. And from there, they start to launch their attacks on the rest of the houses around, trying step by step to evacuate the villages. That's what was happening and still going on against the Palestinian Bedouin communities, which is more than 120 now that has been already ethnically cleansed out of 450 locations that all those under heavy attacks. About the daily life, you can't imagine. We used to say before years as Palestinians that, it will never become worse than the situation that we are living. Nowadays, we are saying, let's enjoy this day because what's coming tomorrow is the worst.
Jamal, thank you.
So this is how.
Thank you. Lubna, let's bring you in here. For one thing, you seem very on edge listening to the updates coming from Jamal. I suppose the situation is very fraught right now. We just heard a clip from an interview you did with a Palestinian mother in Tel. What can you tell us about how she was doing, about her experiences, and how that lines up with the account Jamal just gave?
Yeah, I think she just gave a very small window of the daily life of Palestinians, not just in this past week, but this violence of settlers committed against Palestinians have been documented since the first few days of the occupation. And the woman Nahil that we interviewed here, she just described that how she lives in her house, just have to hide all the time, being awake all night just in case there are raids, having her kids in the house, being afraid also their father will be arrested. And also I have to say that all the edges of the village, which Jamal mentions, it's the areas that are close more to Chabad Gilad settlement, are families left their houses. The men are staying there to protect the houses from the raids, and the children and their mothers staying inside the village in more some kind of secure area. The situation is very difficult in the West Bank. It have been like this, and the violence have been increased a lot after October the 7th in the shadow of the genocide. When the genocide have been normalized, these actions have been kind of nothing, and nobody report about it, nobody speak about it. And I think just only when there is 2 Israeli victims who've been killed in this accident, then somehow this case coming out to public. And sometimes I must say, when there is Israeli activists who join Palestinian farmers to dare to go to their lands, when the victim or the one who been beaten or attacked is Israeli, sometimes it's captured some sort of a news also inside Israel.
So basically, this isn't new. What we're seeing in the West Bank, this violence isn't new, but it's being reported suddenly across international media only now because
there's Israelis involved in that, and because, of course, it's started a debate in Israel if the Palestinians have the right to protect themselves or not to protect, if it's terrorism or not terrorism. But we have over 24 Palestinians who were killed by civilian armed settlers. And when I said armed, there's like thousands of arms and guns with these private guns with these settlers. Ben-Gvir gave license to hundreds of thousands to receive weapons, and even sometimes you don't need even to do an interview to get gun, just to have sometimes in the phone and you have guns. Palestinians are exposed to very vulnerable situation of being attacked in a daily basis. And then when I'm saying attacked, it's been either killed, either beaten, their animals being stolen, poisoned, burning houses. Just a week before this accident in Tel Village, Suhaib Ramadan in July 19, a group of settlers dressed all black, masked, came very early to their house and burn it. He managed to rescue his family in the last minute, but all of the house, including furniture, all of their belongings were burned, and there's no protection. And of course, this could be catastrophe like the case of the Wabshi family. If you remember, in 2015, a whole family was killed because of settlers burned the house. So this is the daily situation.
And there's no protection, but there's no coverage.
There is no protection. There is no coverage. There is people the only thing they can do in Tel, for example, is building this WhatsApp group, just updating when the army coming in, when the settlers coming in, and they just buy their own, just like this. And since October the 7th, there is no red lines for Israel. Israel is doing everything, and the settlers are very dominant. They are very strong. They have, it's not a small case or situation. It's a systematic violence that led by the state. They're sitting in the government. They have representatives. And I think now, especially before the elections in Israel, when Netanyahu want to satisfy the settlers who want their votes, so he just go ahead and completely giving them a green light to just do whatever they want and destroy and burn and kill. And you never hear about anyone who were arrested or questioned by the Israeli police on these occasions.
We're going to return to that question of protection for Palestinians. Jamal, on this point about when this all began, we're being told that the violence happening in the West Bank now, that these are reprisal attacks. This is retribution. This is revenge for something that happened on Friday when 2 Israelis were killed along with 4 Palestinians. That's not just coming out of Israeli media and politicians' mouths. That's the narrative that we're seeing in a lot of the international media. These attacks are retributive. In other words, in some way deserved. Is that accurate? When would you say this violence was triggered?
This media that just like taking the Israeli narrative and started to spread it out and convince their audience, and they have to review their code of ethics. They have a real moral crisis, because simply if you just like make a little bit efforts and try to phone call or to see another resources of media, you will see that This is a Palestinian civilians, unarmed, under attack, ongoing since years now. So, and this is the crisis of human rights law and international law. This is what has been deep in the crisis of the international law, beside the policy of the imperialist governments like the United States mainly, with this administration now. But like the media is contributing to this, unfortunately, which it shouldn't be. What we expect from media is to be a little bit honest and trying to give out the truth to the people. They know that there is a genocide is going in Gaza until now. I'm wondering if this media that you are talking about, we're talking about genocide or using this term. There is an ethnic cleansing and silent genocide to the Palestinian communities in the West Bank. That's going on. There is a Palestinian economy that's collapsing, and there is a Palestinian society that never been in poor situation like this time. Nobody talked about it. But when an Israeli settler killed, who were attacking and trying to kill the Palestinians, when Palestinians defend themselves, then became a retaliation, became a revenge, who's revenging from who? If somebody attack your house and come to kill you, and you defend yourself, and he has been killed in this operation, they also, he has to bring people, these other people have to come to revenge from you because he didn't allow him to kill you. So they want us a nice victim. They want us to be killed and slaughtered, and without protesting, even without our voices here. I'm so angry about this media, and I'm saying that there is a time that it should be stopped and to look at themselves in the mirror of what they are doing.
And this term revenge that's being quoted, it's being graffitied around West Bank villages by settlers. Graffiti is not a new tactic. It's an old settler tactic that dates back decades and is used to intimidate, to communicate certain political messages. Can you just tell us, Jamal, what graffiti is being seen across the West Bank today, and what impact does that have on Palestinians who live inside those walls?
First of all, the media didn't see the graffitis there. It is in a mosque that has been burned, and its schools and its houses, this graffitis that has been written on this. This is to show the settlers' domination over the Palestinians, and it's part of trying to kill any hope with the Palestinians, and to tell the Palestinians, we have the upper hand, we can kill you, we can burn your mosque, your houses, we can kill your children, and you need to shut up. That's the message from this graffitis. This is criminal. This is crimes by the international law. This is what should be talking about. This is it. Look, this is a mosque that has been burned to the ground. Can you imagine if this is a synagogue that has been burned like this? It will be the whole world standing on one leg.
Thank you.
So that's what we seek, Palestine. What we want is a justice. We want the media and the West to look at us as a human being.
Thank you, Jamal. Now, Lubna, you said that Palestinians are completely unprotected at this time.
I will continue from Jamal's point that it's a question is we are in era of time, international law have been disabled. And I just said Palestinians are very exposed at the moment to direct violence. And I would ask the question if not only the media, where is the international community in terms of the governments and diplomats? What action they should take or not take against this violence that's been taken for decades against Palestinians? That Nahil in the summer holiday have to hide her 5 children in a house and not let them even to go to outside house to protect them from any settler attacks, army raids. And this is a serious question that I will again bring to our conversation.
What international community action, and Jamal, I put this to you as well, what international community action would actually work? Because something we've seen since October 7th is an Israeli political climate that is increasingly immune to international criticism. So I suppose it's one thing to say international action is needed. It's another thing to work out what international action would actually impact what settlers are doing in the West Bank.
I would say that I mean, before the October the 7th, there was some kind of red line. You can call it soft diplomacy if you want, that international governments in Europe or Britain or the US will condemn any Israeli action on building settlements or violence. Today, we don't have this. Not from the side of the international community, and not from and Israel now don't care. That's why we see such a massive tsunami of very vulgar and provocative attacks that have taking place every day. There's no one can stop this. Mm. And I'm talking I've been sitting once, not just before I came here to visit. I was sitting in front of a grandfather who was expelled from his land in the Jordan Valley, living near the village of Taibe, sitting with 20 stitches in his head to his chest, with his grandchild. His animals were stolen and being attacked by settlers, his wife attacked by settlers, and you sit in front of him and you don't know what to tell him.
Jamal, would you agree that the international community, certainly needs to do more? What is it that you would call on the international community to do in the face of this impunity and violence?
I think this is a kind of struggle that we have to continue as a Palestinian people with the international movements and people around the world, because we differentiate. In fact, if we look at what was happening in the streets everywhere, like during the genocide, that was amazing. That was very important. This is the hope for us to rescue what we called the international law and at least the human code of ethics. The other part that it needs to stand in front of the responsibility, and that's the responsibility of the movements and the people as well, is to implement their laws that they have been put. I'm talking about European Union. You are dealing with a genocidal regime. There is people killed every day. Other than that, what's happening in the West Bank? This is a violation for the international law, for the international agreements that you are witnessing and you are overseeing, which is mainly what's happening in the West Bank by the settlers. And by the way, this is very organized. I call them the settlers that doing these attacks. This is a paramilitary militias that they are the spearhead of the Israeli government in implementing the annexation and the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank. So they are not separated. So the one who should be punished for that is the Israeli government. When we talk about BDS, Israel has to be isolated, has to be in a pariah state, which is now by the people. What needs from the government is to stop trading with Israel, especially military trade. Stop providing Israel with ammunition and the weapons that they are killing the people, not just in Palestine, but as well in Lebanon, as well in Syria, as well in Gaza. That's still going on.
And because those very weapons that you talk about that are coming from, for example, the US, going to the Israeli government, those are being put in settler hands by Ben-Gvir, National Security Minister, who, as you've mentioned, is directly arming Israeli settlers. So, okay, that's the international community. But what about the Palestinian? Where is the PA?
Yeah, this is a very, very big debate and disappointment within the Palestinian people and movements, by the way. Anyway, we can't hide it anymore. Yeah, the Palestinian Authority takes the position of survival, no matter what's happened. Even if they kill the Palestinians in the villages, or if they have been ethnically cleansed all the area C, if they destroy villages, if they burn villages, they don't anymore even hear their voices to condemn what's happening. And honestly, this is a shame. We are not, as a Palestinian people, we are very shocked that we reached to this point where supposedly the Palestinian leaders is watching the Palestinians slaughtered and the Palestinian land stolen every day. Palestinian villages is under threat of ethnic cleansing and destruction. So there is no justification whatsoever. If the price of standing is that the authority will collapse, let the authority collapse. And anyway, Israel is in the process of collapsing the Palestinian Authority, no matter what they did. If they are collaborators, they are not collaborators. If they cooperate with Israel, they don't cooperate. the Israeli Zionist vision is to collapsing the Palestinian Authority, simply because they don't want any representative to something called for them, from their point of view, a Palestinian people. They don't want to see a Palestinian people. What they are pushing when we talk about annexation plan is just pushing the Palestinians in the minimum area in the West Bank, fragmented, different ghettos, south, middle, east, west, that separated from each other. So that's how they want the Palestinian people. And this is a model of Gaza. In fact, if you look about the impact of what's happening, when we talk about the ethnic cleansing between communities, you know what does this mean? The whole animal production has been get rid of. 85% of the Palestinian needs from the animal production is coming from this community. While they are blocking now the Palestinian villages with over 1,200 gates and with all these obstacles and more than 400 outposts now that blocking the Palestinians occupying the Palestinian fields. They don't want the Palestinians to reach their olive groves in the West Bank. You know what does it mean, this? One of the main economy is collapsing. We used to export yearly from 5,000 to 15,000 tons of olive oil. We are going to import now olive oil from neighboring countries or from Europe. I don't know from where. If you talk about 200,000 Palestinian workers, since now 3 years, they are sitting in their homes. They don't know how to feed their children. Palestinian companies not anymore can function. There's more than 68,000 workers now became thrown to the unemployment because of this. If you want to travel in the West Bank from city to the city, it takes 6 hours, which is normally take 1 hour or 2 hours. So they are pushing the Palestinian society for collapsing. So the situation is much more dangerous than what the people see.
What recourse is there for Palestinians? So there's silence from the international community. There's no Palestinian Authority. Some of what's happening, even by Israel standards, is clearly illegal. What can Palestinians do in the West Bank if their home, if their livestock is stolen or shot? Is there anywhere that they can turn to for some sort of judicial process?
This year, by the way, 4,000 Palestinian sheep has been stolen from the villages in between Ramallah and Nablus, a little bit to the Jordan Valley slopes. So I think what we need the Palestinians to do now, is the main strategy that we are have to follow, is to steadfast, to keep standing, and to resist the ethnic cleansing, the evacuation of our communities, to find the means how we can depend on ourselves and trying to generate what can keep standing and resisting. In the middle of all what's happening and how Israeli looks like and how the Palestinian Authority looks like and what the Americans and Europeans are busy with. So, yeah, Palestinians are exposed more than any time before. They are under attack every day by soldiers, by Israeli settlers. 20,000 Palestinians has been arrested, just like in 1 year. This is showed that there is daily attacks, daily arresting of the Palestinian people. And now there is Israelis seriously talking about evacuating another refugee camp, which is mostly going to be Kalandi refugee camp.
Lubna, is there anything that you want to add to that?
I just want to add a few last lines that I don't think Israel leaving many choices for Palestinians when you look at the picture and being exposed, as I mentioned. And I do think that this may lead to a third intifada and to massive protests inside the West Bank. And this is a scenario that also Israeli, some would call them mainstream, afraid of. That's why they started some to call to take actions against the settler violence. But I can't see any, if the international community and Israel that will not stop this massive, impossible life conditions and violence, and also closing the roads, accessing, moving now in the West Bank, takes you hours within 20 kilometers. It would take you a whole day. So I can imagine, as a Palestinian who knows very well the field in Palestine and especially in the West Bank, I would not be surprised if there would be a massive protest and intifada in the West Bank.
Jamal Juma, thank you so much for your time. And Lubna Masarwa, thank you for being here. To understand what's happening inside the West Bank, we have to look at what's happening inside Israel. After Friday's killings, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who holds sweeping powers over the West Bank, said Palestinian villages involved should be left looking like Nablus and Tulkarm, where refugee camps have been violently demolished. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir went further. He said those towns should be treated like Beit Hanun in Gaza, a place that was flattened by Israeli airstrikes. He wrote, "For every Jew murdered, the enemy must suffer the loss of land and homes." These are not fringe voices. They are two of the most senior ministers in Israel's government. And they are in campaign mode. Israelis go to the polls on the 27th of October in what's been called the most polarized election in the country's history. To help us understand the politics driving this moment, I'm joined now by Orly Noy, an Israeli journalist, human rights activist, and political candidate. Orly, welcome to MEE Live. Now, until standing down to run in the election, you chaired the board of Beit Salim. Talk us through what the group has documented in the West Bank, not just with the current abuses, but the wider patterns they point to.
Thank you so much for having me, Matilda. Well, according to all of our documentations since October 7th, 2023, of course, we are all aware of the ongoing genocide in Gaza, but our documentation shows that the situation in the West Bank turned unbelievably worse in every imaginable aspect that we can speak of. Of course, it's not only Gaza and the West Bank. The situation all over the territory between the river and the sea has taken a turn to the worse. I mean, we can speak, of course, about the tortures that Palestinian detainees and prisoners are going through, etc. But specifically in the West Bank, the attempt to accelerate the ongoing ethnic cleansing has lost any boundaries, any red lines, and is being promoted full scale with the full cooperation between the army and the most violent among the settlers. We see the constant expansion of settlements, of outposts that even according to the apartheid Israeli laws are illegal, but we are seeing them keep expanding with the full protection and cooperation of the Israeli army. 2 points that I would stress out especially are one, the expansion of the settler violence into areas B and A. I mean, up until recently, they were concentrated mainly to the sea areas. Now, as we saw last Friday, we can see already settlers with the full support of and protection of the Israeli army actually penetrating into areas A and confronting Palestinians there. And the other point is and I have really no other way to say it other than blunt executions of Palestinians. We are in the West Bank. We are commemorating this week 1 year to the execution of Aoudeh Hadalin, a brilliant, one of the most prominent active Palestinian activists from the village of al-Khair. This execution was done in front of at least 20 different cameras. No one was held accountable for it. And on the contrary, Palestinian men from the village were actually arrested after this execution. So the situation is deteriorating constantly and rapidly.
Yeah, and over the last few days in particular, we've seen exponential escalation. I think to understand this, can you give your perspective on when we see an escalation of the kind we're seeing now, who does it benefit?
Well, it's very clearly to the benefit of the extreme right wing in Israel. I mean, this is the Netanyahu's government has been trying to avoid accountability since October 7th, 2023. And the way to do that is to keep the state and the region in a constant state of emergency, of crisis, so that the Israeli citizens are not do not have the availability to demand this accountability from their government. If we are constantly in the state of emergency, if we are involved in 7 different fronts of war, if we will maybe soon again need to run for shelters, etc., people are not available to go and demonstrate against their government, to demand any sort of accountability. So without a doubt, a state of constant emergency is serving the right wing always, and especially after October 7th.
So is it a case that since the front in Iran and the fronts in Lebanon and Gaza have sort of quietened down in Israeli society, the West Bank is opening up as another battleground? How real is the risk of Netanyahu manufacturing an emergency by October that could actually disrupt the election Israelis are due to hold?
It is a very real probability. It is a very real possibility. This is the first time that Israelis, many of them, actually doubt the possibility of the elections being held at their due time. Netanyahu already said when he passed recently a decision within his party that in a case of emergency they will not hold the primaries because Netanyahu really doesn't want that. He already implied that in a case of emergency, even the general elections will be under question. And we know that Netanyahu holds back on nothing. He refrains from nothing in order to save his seat as a prime minister. So it is an absolute possibility that cannot be excluded, that we won't have actually elections on October 27th.
There's also, of course, his coalition partners, Ben Gvir, Smotrich, who hold settler interests very close, and annexation is a clear stated goal of these leaders. Is there an extent to which, as the election approaches, they fear they might lose the election and this is the moment to push forward with annexation? Is there an urgency there, or is it rather like it's a vote winner for them to manufacture this escalation?
I mean, they are. I think it's both. It's both. It's the fear of not being re-elected. Smotrich himself, despite the fact that he may be the most efficient and effective of this fascist government, he's on the verge of the threshold. I mean, his own political future is not that certain. So without a doubt, there is an element of trying to achieve as much as possible before the government changes. And also, everything that they do at this moment, including provoking this escalation, is part of an election campaign. There is no other way to see that. This is their campaign.
And how about the opposition's campaign? You have the Together Party led by Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid, also Yair Golan on the left. How effective are these opposition groups in offering an alternative answer to the question of Palestine?
Well, an alternative, unfortunately, and I really say it with great sorrow, if even before October 7th, the so-called Zionist left and center shifted constantly to the right, after October 7th, they became complete complicits with the genocide. They supported fully the genocide. They are still supporting 100% the army with all of its atrocities and crimes of war and against humanity. So within the Zionist spectrum, you don't see an alternative. We are just now seeing the campaign by the Democrats, which is supposed to be the Zionist, to represent the Zionist left. It's an extremely militaristic, nationalistic campaign. So we don't see a real alternative there. We are still waiting to see, with the hope that the joint list will emerge soon, and with a united Palestinian political front, we might be able to speak of real alternative, but not within the Zionist spectrum.
Now, Orly, you are yourself a part of this election discussion. You've just been selected as a candidate for Balad, the Palestinian-led party. Where do you see the election heading, and what will that likely mean for the West Bank?
This is really such an unbelievably worrying and sad moment to be speaking even about, politics in this meaning of political election, etc. We need to be realistic. The next government, whatever its shape will be, is not going to be a peace-promoting government. It's not going to be a government that will end the occupation. It will not be a government that will challenge in any way the apartheid or the ongoing genocide in Gaza, etc. We can hope that it will be a government that will value once again, at least to some degree, the international position, that will not be a government that so clearly and bluntly defies international law and international political arena. Because if this right-wing, extreme right-wing, fascist, genocidal government will come to power once again, then there is a real fear that we will see the horrifying images from Gaza reaching the West Bank as well. And also, we must say that in this scenario, the future of the Palestinian citizens of Israel inside the 48 borders is also going to be under great danger.
Thank you, Ollie. And finally, where does popular Israeli opinion sit when we're watching these events unfold in the West Bank? Just talk us through the cross-section of opinion and reactions that you've seen.
Well, the level of the brainwash, the collective brainwash of the Israelis is such that even after it was already exposed, that let's take, for example, the event on Friday, even after it was already reported that it was an initiated clash by the settlers that invaded the Palestinian village, threatening with arms. And by the way, yesterday it was already published that even the two Israelis were shot by other Israelis, most probably, that the Palestinians didn't kill. It doesn't matter. The brainwash is so deep that the entire Israeli discourse is about a pogrom carried out by Palestinian terrorists, and they want revenge as usual. The next elections are just the beginning. We will need decades of rehabilitation of this genocidal society. We have a lot of work ahead of us.
You said it doesn't matter that whether, even if this information comes out that the probability shows Israelis were behind the killing of the Israelis on Friday. Is that to do with press freedom, or is it that there's misinformation in the media, or is it that even when the media publishes the facts, it doesn't cut through the political rhetoric?
The media the Israeli media should sit right next to Netanyahu on the benches of Hague. It's not just concealing information from the Israeli public. The information is often there, and we are living in a world of massive, information. The information is there, and even the Israeli media sometimes brings the information to the public. The problem is with the way that the Israeli media frames information completely. There is no criticism, in a complete uncritical way, always backing up the army, always portraying the Palestinians as terrorists, as violent, as dangerous. So this, and also Israelis don't meet Palestinians from the West Bank anymore. They are not allowed to come inside to work. So it is very easy to brainwash an entire society into seeing another society as only as terrorists and as dangerous people.
Orly Noy, thank you so much for your time and expertise. And for today, that is all that we have time for. To all of you watching, thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, make sure you're following us on social media at Middle East Eye. You can email meelive@middleeasteye.net. I'll be here live at 5 every Tuesday and Thursday noon if you're in New York. See you then.